Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. In my previous life, Jason Miller's company was on the brink of bankruptcy. His greatest rival came to me with a proposal to join forces and take over Jason's company. Back then, I was still naive and believed in pure love, so I rejected him on the spot. I chose to help Jason through his crisis instead. We agreed to get engaged after everything was settled, but on the very day we were supposed to discuss our engagement, Jason pushed me off a tall building. I was smashed into a pile of broken flesh. What a cruel betrayal in return for my kindness. All this just to force me to marry you? I'd rather live in poverty my entire life than spend it trapped in your rotten, money-soaked world. It wasn't until that moment I realized Jason had never let go of his so-called first love. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Jason's company faced its crisis. So when Hudson Ford, his arch-rival, made the same offer again, I simply smiled and said, "Sure, we can work together." But Jason was still my beloved childhood friend. I sent him a message. "Pay more, Jason. Come pick me up. I'm cornered by debt collectors in your company building. It's extremely urgent." Then my phone rang. The caller was Jason Miller, my childhood friend and the person I had secretly loved for years. An hour ago, if he had called me, I would have dropped everything and run to him without a second thought. But now I calmly declined the call, looked at the man sitting in front of me and winked. "Mr. Ford, didn't you just say you wanted to take over the Miller Group with me? You sure have a bold appetite." Hudson Ford sat across from me with both hands folded on the table, exuding elegance and quiet authority. "Miss Shea, this is a very appealing deal, don't you think?" Of course it was. Jason was nothing but a failure who couldn't accomplish anything. In just 2 years he had managed to drag the once prestigious Miller Group down from an industry leader to a cash-burning mess. But even a dying beast still has meat on its bones. Though the company had fallen, it still held valuable resources worth sinking teeth into. If I joined forces with Hudson now, we could crush Jason together. It would be a mutually beneficial move with no downside for either of us. With that thought, I smiled faintly. "Your offer is certainly tempting, Mr. Ford, but sometimes loyalty means more than profit." There was a flicker of disappointment in Hudson's eyes as he asked, "So you're turning me down?" I tapped the table lightly. "No, what I meant is I'm in, but Jason is my beloved childhood friend, so raise the price." While I was negotiating with Hudson Ford, Jason called me non-stop. In less than 30 minutes, I already had over 100 missed calls. Hudson glanced at the screen and gave a subtle smirk, barely a few pixels of movement on his lips. I picked up my car keys, gave a small wave and said, "Please, doing business. Expect an update from me soon." Hudson didn't say anything. I drove to the Miller Group building and observed from a distance. Collectors and bank officers had completely surrounded the place. There wasn't even a gap to slip through. Right then, Jason's name flashed on my phone again. His voice was trembling. "Are you here?" "I am," I replied. "But there are too many people. I can't get in. You'll have to find your own way out." Jason was desperate. "There are people all around me. How am I supposed to get out?" I kept my voice calm and steady. "Jump from the top floor. Maybe if you jump, the company's crisis will be solved." Jason shouted in anger. "This isn't the time to joke." But I wasn't joking at all. I truly wanted him dead. In my past life, it was at this very place that Jason had pushed me off the building. I still remember the twisted, hideous look on his face as he did it. "I thought you helped me because you were kind," he once sneered. "Turns out you had your own agenda. What a vile way to repay kindness with betrayal. All just to force me to marry you. Keep dreaming. The only woman I'll marry is Lauren. I'd rather live a lifetime in poverty than spend a single day in your filthy, half-old, drenched world." In those few seconds before I hit the ground, countless memories flashed through my mind. I wanted to tell Jason Miller the truth, that things weren't what he thought. I wanted to marry him not for any benefit or ulterior motive, but because I genuinely loved him. I also wanted to warn him about Hudson Ford. Hudson had once approached me with a plan to join forces and take over the Miller Group, but I had flatly turned him down. Unfortunately, it was all too late. My body slammed hard into the ground, sending dust flying everywhere. Blood gushed uncontrollably from my mouth and nose. A searing pain tore through my insides as if every organ had been shredded. 10 minutes later, Jason finally arrived at the scene, escorted by his bodyguards. He didn't even glance at me. He turned to his assistant and said coldly, "Call the police. Emily Shea committed suicide out of guilt for embezzling company funds. Let the authorities handle it." Only then did I realize Jason wasn't just ungrateful. He had pinned the blame on me too. The last thing I saw before everything faded was Jason hurriedly getting into his luxury car, passionately embracing the girl sitting in the passenger seat. I knew that girl. It was Lauren Lynn, the same unattainable woman Jason had always pined for. After all that had happened, we had come full circle, and once again I was nothing but a naive, innocent sacrifice. Luckily, heaven showed mercy and gave me a second chance. This time I would make Jason Miller pay for everything he did. Maybe I had gone quiet for too long. Or maybe Jason finally realized that he was at a disadvantage and shouldn't have lost his temper with me. In any case, his tone began to shift. "I'm sorry, Emily. I lost it just now. You know how desperate things are for me. Those debt collectors outside, if they had the chance, they'd eat me alive. I really have no choice. If this were my previous life, I, his ever-loyal lapdog, would have rushed in to solve all his problems without hesitation, probably handing over a huge sum of money. But now, since he didn't ask, I didn't offer. When he finally spoke, I feigned surprise. I yawned lazily. "Oh, it's that dangerous around you? Then maybe I should leave." No, wait. Don't go." Jason finally panicked. "Just help me create a distraction, please." I exited the parking garage and casually helped him divert the media's attention as I kept the reporters busy. Jason bolted out from the underground garage and ran toward my car. This was the first time I had seen him since my rebirth. The immense financial pressure had reduced him to a shadow of his former self. A few strands of white hair had already appeared on his head, and dark circles hung under his eyes. He looked utterly exhausted. In the past, I would have asked after his health, tried to comfort him, and worried that he might do something foolish. But now I finally understood. Feeling sorry for a man is the start of your own misfortune. "Emily, I must look like a mess right now," Jason said with a bitter smile. His whole body radiated defeat. "Just a bit," I replied. Jason went on. "I already poured everything, literally everything my parents left me, into covering the company's debts. Now I'm completely broke. I have nothing left. It's really miserable." No matter how pitifully Jason spoke, I simply nodded along, non-committal, detached. I didn't take initiative, and I certainly didn't take responsibility. Eventually, Jason couldn't keep up the act. He looked at me with those soft, pleading eyes of his, full of fake emotion. "Emily, you're all I have now. You're not going to leave me, are you?" I smiled faintly. "Of course not." But before he could breathe a sigh of relief, I continued. "Because we're just friends, right? No business ties, no emotional entanglements. So really, there's nothing to leave behind." Jason suddenly grabbed my arm. "Emily, stop joking around. I've always known you had a crush on me. Just admit it. I won't make fun of you." Screech. I slammed on the brakes. A car rammed straight into the passenger side. Jason was knocked unconscious on the spot by the airbag. The car crash, I planned it. I just didn't expect Jason's luck to be this tough. He only ended up with a mild concussion. A few days in the hospital and he'd be fine. The very first thing he did after waking up from surgery was grab my hand. "Don't blame yourself," he said. "I know it was an accident. I don't hold it against you." I didn't pull my hand back. I simply curved my lips into a flawless smile. To secure funding from the Shea family, Jason Miller was now willing to swallow his disgust toward me and pretend to be affectionate. That couldn't have been easy for him. Fortunately, Lauren Lynn arrived just in time. She floated into the hospital room in a flowing white dress, graceful and pristine like a lotus untouched by dust. She said nothing but stared at our tightly clasped hands. Jason instantly let go and scrambled to his feet. "Baby Lauren, what are you doing here?" I casually interjected. "After the crash, my phone broke. I needed to call for help, so I borrowed yours. That's when I noticed your top pinned contact was Lauren Lynn. So I gave her a quick ring." Lauren nodded, as serene and aloof as ever. This was awkward. One was his true love, the other his financial lifeline, and now Jason was stuck between the two of us, torn and cornered. I picked up my handbag. I'll leave you two to talk. I'm heading out. Billings to the right after you exit. Don't forget to pay the surgery fee. But neither Jason nor Lauren had enough to scrape together even $200. Paying hospital bills was out of the question. Jason looked at me. Emily, you know how it is. Can you lend me a bit of money? I pointed at Lauren. She doesn't have any. 10 years ago, we were all still in high school. Back then, it made sense that Lauren, who got into a prestigious private school on a poverty scholarship, was short on cash. But 10 years later, we were all supposed to be adults who had weathered the real world. You'd think they'd be able to pull together a few thousand at least. But of course I knew the truth. Since graduating from college, Lauren hadn't worked a single day. Her food, clothes, and everything else had all been paid for by Jason, and Jason had never seen a problem with that. In fact, he wanted someone like her. Someone who depended on him entirely. That $10,000 Jason wired to Lauren every month for a family as wealthy as the Millers used to be was nothing but dreams. No matter how beautiful, eventually they come to an end. The Miller family was bankrupt now. With no more financial support, what was Lauren going to do from here? I guess I had only myself to blame. Too soft-hearted, too wealthy, and too blind to see Jason's true nature. It was bad enough that I supported him like a fool. Turns out, I'd also been footing the bill for his little mistress all along. Lauren's face flushed red, like she'd been insulted. I never cared about money. I've always treated it like dirt. I never even tried to save. I looked her up and down, taking in her outfit. She was dressed head to toe in custom designer pieces. The handbag dangling from her wrist was easily worth 6 figures. Someone like that dares to say money means nothing to them. Jason was starting to realize it too. He shot Lauren a look tinged with resentment. He'd poured so much money into her over the years. If she had even a shred of business sense, if she had saved or invested any of it, they wouldn't be in such a hopeless situation now. In the end, Jason wrote me a formal IOU and borrowed exactly $10,000. That barely covered his medical bills. As for the Miller Group's massive debt, they were still several financial milestones short. Jason, the worthless mess that he was, hid out in the hospital and refused to show his face. Lauren knew absolutely nothing about business. If they had let her handle things, she probably would have caused even more damage. But she was Jason's dream girl, his one and only white moonlight. Once she said she wanted to help, Jason had no reason to refuse soon. Lauren was parachuted into the company and installed as the acting CEO of the entire Miller Group. She was beautiful, elegant, and had a presence that turned heads. Many employees started referring to her as some kind of goddess sent to save the sinking company, and Lauren believed it too. With a grand wave of her hand, she announced sweeping reforms to ease employee burdens, abolishing clock-in and clock-out rules, giving everyone a floating holiday for the new year, and even promising free housing with no utility bills as long as you stayed with the Miller Group through this crisis. She declared there would be massive rewards ahead. It all sounded great on paper. The only problem? Lauren forgot one small detail. The company's bank account was already empty. At first, the staff was genuinely motivated, but not even 2 days passed before people started showing up late, leaving early, or requesting vacation. When it came time to assign real work, there wasn't a single reliable person to be found. The only way to maintain operations was to keep shifting the burden downward, piling more and more pressure on the lower ranks. The remaining employees were miserable, and soon began submitting their own vacation requests. In the end, the only ones left in the entire company were the janitors and security guards pretending to work while doing practically nothing. The most ridiculous part? Several employees actually approached Lauren Lynn to request reimbursement for rent. "Miss Lynn, you promised to arrange housing for us," one of them said. "But we haven't seen a single apartment, so we rented places near the office ourselves. Can you have finance reimburse us?" When the bills came in, they were all for luxury apartments with 5-digit monthly rents. Lauren nearly passed out from shock. Her face turned pale. "What do you mean by this?" The employees looked puzzled. "Weren't you the one who made the promise? Come on, sign off on the reimbursement forms. We've got another vacation day tomorrow." But the company had long since turned into a sinking ship full of holes. Thanks to Lauren's disastrous management, the Miller Group, already on the brink of collapse, was now speeding full throttle straight toward ruin. When Jason Miller learned about the company's actual condition, he practically lost his mind. He didn't even care that I was there. He lashed out at Lauren in a fit of rage. "Are you running a business or a charity? You've burned through what little we had left." Lauren's eyes brimmed with tears. "I was just trying to boost morale." "What morale? Who needs you to do that?" Jason exploded, his words coming out sharp and fast. "What was I thinking, falling for someone as clueless and useless as you?" Lauren burst into tears, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. But tears were meaningless now. The Miller family couldn't afford another catastrophe. With no other options, Jason came to me, hat in hand, asking me to join the company as a senior executive. He gently placed his palm over the back of my hand, his eyes full of calculated sincerity. Jason said, "Emily, please, you're the only one I can trust. I really need your help." I turned him down politely. "I still have my own family business to manage. Besides, you've got Lauren by your side. She was always top of the class. I'm sure handling company matters is nothing for her." Jason leaned in, speaking with feeling. "You misunderstood. There's nothing between me and Lauren. It's just a business arrangement. She's an employee, nothing more." I nearly laughed. If I hadn't seen them kissing with my own eyes in my last life, I might have believed him again. But I didn't call him out on the lie. Letting the prey think they're the hunter, manipulating them from the shadows, is its own kind of sport. I tilted my head as if considering it. Jason seized the moment and pressed harder. "Just say yes. If my parents were still alive, they would be so grateful to you." I didn't agree. Before I could even respond, Lauren jumped in, shouting in protest. She was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, her face almost completely hidden. Turns out she'd gotten suspicious when she heard Jason was meeting with me, so she followed him here in disguise and had been eavesdropping from the start. When she heard Jason wanted to replace her with me, she lost it, and her calm, graceful persona crumbled in an instant. She stormed over and shouted, "Emily Shea, do you even have any shame? You've been chasing Jason since high school. Some dogs just never learn to stop eating crap. You're rich, aren't you? Why not just go buy yourself a few male escorts? Why fight me for Jason?" I blinked, then looked innocently at Jason. His face darkened with embarrassment. He grabbed Lauren roughly and pulled her behind him. "That's enough. What would you know about running a company? Emily is incredibly capable. Right now, she's the only one who can save us." Lauren wouldn't back down. "What's so great about her, huh? Just because she's got more money than I do? Admit it, you've changed. You just want to climb into the Shea family. Dream on," she sneered. "Don't forget I was the one who stayed by your side. Will you stop sabotaging me?" Jason snapped. Then, in a moment of pure rage, he slapped Lauren hard across the face. I stood there, stunned. He just hit her. Lauren Lynn's hysterical scream drew the attention of nearby customers who turned to stare in our direction. Jason Miller had always cared deeply about appearances, but now Lauren had made a public scene and humiliated him. Rather than back down, he doubled down and told her to get lost. Clutching her reddened cheek, Lauren glared at us and spat out, "You two just wait. I'll make sure you both pay for this." Then she stormed out of the cafe. Jason stared at her retreating figure, then collapsed back into his chair, covering his eyes with the back of his hand. I couldn't help but find it all absurd. You were the one who slapped her. You were the one who kicked her out, and now you're playing the victim. For whose benefit? After sulking for a few minutes, Jason snapped back to reality and apologized. Lauren's always been overbearing just because we went to high school together. She constantly meddled in company affairs. Honestly, I've put up with her for far too long. Right now, Emily, only you can save the Miller Group. I tried to decline again and again, but Jason was relentless, insisting I take on this flaming mess of a job. In the end, I sighed. Well, our families are still tied together by blood and history after all. I guess I don't really have a choice. Jason's face lit up with delight, but I caught the glint of calculation in his eyes. I knew exactly what he was planning. He'd never pay me a salary or share any profits. On the contrary, he expected to use Shea family resources and connections to build himself a golden bridge to safety. Unfortunately for him, I was no longer the naive idiot from my past life. Jason Miller, let's see who outplays whom. He appointed me as vice president of the Miller Group, placing the company's operations entirely in my hands. Meanwhile, he fully embraced the leisurely life, fishing at the reservoir, taking long walks, doing everything but work. He played the role of a hands-off boss to perfection, so I became the true authority at the Miller Group. Outwardly, I handled every issue with diligence and loyalty. Behind the scenes, I quietly poached top talent and key clients, transferring them to the Shea and Ford companies. Hudson Ford didn't disappoint me either. He cracked several of the Miller Group's core technologies and sold them to me at a discount. Together, we stripped the company clean. Soon, the Miller Group was nothing but an empty shell, and Jason had no clue. He remained lost in his fantasy of making easy money with no effort. Then came the day of reckoning. The board of shareholders convened and officially declared bankruptcy. Jason was dragged into the meeting in a panic, completely clueless, but he was confident. As long as I testified on his behalf, he believed everything would work out. "Why am I even here?" he asked. "Didn't I say you were handling everything?" The reek of alcohol and a bright lipstick stain marked his collar. The color was garish, definitely not something Lauren would ever wear. She was far too proud for that kind of shade. When his eyes met mine, Jason flinched and quickly rubbed at the lipstick mark. "Don't get the wrong idea," he mumbled. "I was entertaining clients. I only drank to take some pressure off your shoulders. I ended up drinking until I threw up." I smiled faintly. "Wow, that must have been really hard on you." "For you, I'd endure anything," he said, ignoring the others in the room as he fed me sweet, nauseating words. I pointed to a chair. "Have a seat. The meeting's about to start." Jason straightened his back proudly, fully expecting to be showered with praise. In his mind, he was the hero who led the company back from the brink. He deserved admiration and applause, but the expected compliments never came. The shareholders looked at him with nothing but contempt and smug satisfaction. "Mr. Miller, please sign here." One of them said. "The company is entering formal bankruptcy proceedings. President Ford from Ford Enterprises will be arriving shortly to complete the acquisition." Jason looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "What did you say?" "Hudson Ford is buying my company." The answer was obvious. No one even bothered to respond. Jason spun around and stared at me, eyes burning. "What the hell is going on?" I shrugged and gave a helpless smile. "I sent you the email. You never replied." Of course, Jason had been too busy partying in nightclubs and bars to check a single work message. "But even if that's true," Jason stammered, "how could things have gotten this bad? We shouldn't be bankrupt." I pulled out a thick stack of financial reports and threw them onto the table. "The company owes the bank several $100 million. I've done everything I can. There's no saving it." "But can't the Shea family cover that amount?" Jason Miller blurted out. The moment the words left his mouth, he immediately regretted them. Some things should be kept buried. Say them out loud and they instantly rot. I turned to him coldly. "And what does my family's money have to do with you?" Everyone in the room was watching. Sweat started to bead on Jason's forehead. "Don't get me wrong, what I meant was, maybe there's still hope for the company if you're willing to marry me." Before I could respond, a cool, commanding voice rang out from the doorway. Hudson Ford strode into the conference room, followed by a group of nervous-looking board members. The other shareholders all stood up to greet their new potential backer with flattery and forced smiles. Jason, on the other hand, had just been dealt the final blow. His company gone, his ego shattered. Add that to the booze and debauchery he'd been drowning in, and the man who now sat in front of us was nothing but a shriveled shell. His aura was sleazy, and he looked 10 years older than he had just weeks ago. The contrast between him and Hudson, who was taller, sharper, and in control, was a dagger to Jason's pride. "Hudson Ford, who let you in? Get the hell out!" Jason snapped. "And the rest of you useless. Don't just stand there, get back to work." His outburst was pathetic. Nobody moved. Why would they? Working under Jason meant hunger and chaos. Employees didn't care who the boss was. They just wanted to get paid. Jason was seething, furious that no one listened. He slumped in the executive chair and refused to move. Hudson didn't bother arguing. He simply had someone call the police. Jason tried to resist, but the debt he owed was astronomical. If he didn't hand over control of the company, he was facing prison. When forced to choose between pride and freedom, Jason didn't hesitate, he chose freedom. He signed the handover agreement with a resentful scowl, muttering something about ambitious young men always starting from nothing. When it was all over, he waved at me. "Emily, let's go. I had my assistant rent us an apartment. You can just." I stepped back 2 paces. "When did I ever say I was going with you?" Jason froze. "If you don't go with me, then where will you go?" I smiled brightly. "Your family went bankrupt, mine didn't. Obviously, I'm going back to my parents' villa." The realization that I wouldn't be living in misery with him finally hit, and Jason began to panic. "You said you'd help me rebuild. You can't abandon me now." How ridiculous. In my past life, I ignored my parents' objections and moved into a crummy rental with Jason. We lived in hardship. I'd wake up before dawn to haul inventory and collapse into bed after midnight, exhausted. My parents, heartbroken, wired me a large sum of money. I was thrilled and naively gave all of it to Jason. He drained every last drop of my family's resources, then turned around and kicked me aside. And now this man had the audacity to ask why I was abandoning him. Anger flared in me. "What do I owe you? Why should I suffer with you?" Jason looked stunned but held his ground. "Didn't you say you liked me? I agreed to marry you. If we just get through this rough patch, I'll give you anything you want. Isn't there a saying? A good wife helps her husband fulfill his ambition. Then am I the gold in that proverb?" I scoffed. "Sorry, I already have my own gold. I don't need your crumbs." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Hudson's car still parked by the curb. I needed to go talk to him about how we'd divide up and how we'd continue our collaboration. Jason followed my gaze and spotted the car too. His face twisted with rage. "It's him, isn't it? Hudson Ford seduced you. No wonder I couldn't stand that guy back in school," he spat. "Always had a bad feeling about him." Jason and Hudson had graduated from the same high school. Hudson was better looking, came from a wealthier family, and had always been the center of attention. Jason was insanely jealous. He felt like Hudson had stolen all the spotlight. Now that old bitterness was boiling over, fueled by failure, envy, and humiliation. "Let me go," I shouted, trying to shake him off. "I won't," Jason growled, gripping tighter. "What's so great about Hudson Ford?" Jason Miller was practically shouting now. "What did he do to wrap you around his finger?" The more he spoke, the more emotional he became. Eventually, his voice even carried a hint of genuine feeling. "Don't let a few favors fool you. I know exactly how men think. Hudson doesn't actually like you. He just wants the Shea family's power." I calmed down by then. I looked him in the eye and asked, "Then what about you?" Jason straightened up, caught off guard. "I really like you. Ido." "Then how do you explain Lauren Lynn?" I shot back. "She told me herself she was pregnant with your child." Jason panicked and insisted it was all Lauren's doing. "She came on to me, it was an accident. I mean, why else would I sleep with some broke student if she hadn't thrown herself at me?" He stepped closer. "Emily, I get it now. A lasting marriage takes equal footing. I don't care about your past with Hudson, and you shouldn't either. Let's not bring up Lauren anymore. Let's just build a future together, okay?" His shamelessness was beyond anything I could have imagined. I slapped him across the face and climbed into Hudson's car. Hudson was reading over a contract when I got in. Seeing me, he handed it over. I reviewed the document carefully. Everything looked in order. "Don't forget the cut you promised me," I said. "Of course, to a successful partnership," Hudson replied with a faint smile, starting the engine. Jason hobbled after us, limping behind the car like a stray dog. The only thing missing was a thunderstorm to make the scene more pathetic. Hudson glanced in the rearview mirror and grinned slightly, clearly in a good mood. He dropped me off at home and then went straight back to work. My parents were already waiting anxiously. They had heard whispers about the Miller family's looming bankruptcy and had warned me repeatedly not to get involved. What they hadn't expected was for me to come home not as a ruined woman living in a rental, but with 60% of the Miller Group shares in hand. When they saw I hadn't been mistreated, they finally relaxed. Then they began discussing what to do about Jason. "Jason's a child we've watched grow up," Dad said. "Now that his family's gone bankrupt and he doesn't even have a place to stay, maybe we should lend him one of our apartments. What do you think, Emily?" I immediately objected. He's got 2 working legs. He can find a place himself. Mom, Dad, I really think you should stay out of Miller family business. What if he asks you for startup money? Would you actually give it to him? The truth was our families hadn't been close in years. Ever since Uncle Miller and Aunt Miller passed away, Jason had stopped coming to visit, even on holidays. He didn't even bother to send a New Year's text. My parents never said it out loud, but I knew they felt hurt. And yet, I had been the idiot blindly determined to marry him, dragging my parents through all that pain. I couldn't even imagine how they must have felt when they heard I jumped to my death because of him. Now, seeing me go after Jason with no mercy, my parents found it strange but didn't question it too much. In the world of business, allies today could become enemies tomorrow. As long as I stayed safe and the company ran smoothly, they were content to leave the rest alone. But Jason wasn't giving up. He started lurking outside my house, waiting to pounce whenever I came out. One morning, he rushed over as soon as I stepped outside. "You're finally willing to see me," he gasped. "Just hear me out." I signaled the bodyguards to get rid of him. They moved in at once. Jason's face was shoved into the pavement. He looked absolutely pathetic, but still, he stretched his arm out toward me. "Emily, I have something for you." I told the guards to let him go. With my arms crossed, I looked down at him, my voice flat. "What is it?" Jason slowly got up from the ground, inhaling sharply through clenched teeth. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small package. It wasn't until finally, in his trembling hands, lay a national ID card and a household registration booklet. Jason Miller looked at me with complete confidence as he said, "I brought my ID. We can go register our marriage right now. I know this has been your dream for a long time, and I'm ready to make it come true for you, baby. Let's go." I couldn't help it. I immediately doubled over and dry heaved on the spot. The look on Jason's face was an absolute mess, like someone had dumped an entire spice rack onto his expression. Embarrassed, confused, offended, all at once. But he was still so self-absorbed, so convinced of his charm that he didn't think I was repulsed by him. "No." He thought there was some hidden reason. "You're not pregnant, are you?" he asked, his voice dropping. "Who is it?" Was it Hudson Ford? A vein popped on Jason's forehead. His jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth grinding. "How dare he touch what's mine? I swear he's dead." I narrowed my eyes, my voice ice cold. "Say one more disgusting word, and I'll rip your mouth apart." Maybe it was the intensity in my tone, but Jason shrank back slightly and muttered under his breath, "Slut and bastard." The bodyguards beat him without hesitation, then dragged him out like garbage and dumped him outside the gate. He scrambled away like a wild dog in retreat. I watched him stumble off and could only sneer. Just because I didn't have time to deal with Jason now didn't mean I was going to let him go. The memory of him pushing me from that building in my past life still burned fresh in my mind. He would pay in blood. It was the only way to erase the rage in my heart. But Jason was even more shameless than I expected. When begging failed, he turned to threats. He sent me a text. "You wouldn't want the world to know you're pregnant out of wedlock, would you? Transfer me $10 million, or I'll ruin your reputation." I responded with one word. Scram! Furious, Jason turned to the lowest tactic, media slander. He rounded up a group of third-rate tabloid reporters to smear me. Shocking. Aries allegedly pregnant before marriage. Guess who the father is? Then he showed up on camera playing the victim. Tears streamed down his face as he cried about betrayal and heartbreak. Emily Shea and I were engaged since childhood. I always treated her like my fiancée. I planned to marry her once I was stable, but after I went bankrupt, she couldn't stand the poverty and ran off with Hudson Ford. When I demanded an explanation, I was beaten and humiliated. I even saw her burying her own child right in front of me. As a man, how can I swallow this injustice? Please, someone stand up for me. He even pulled out a crumpled old piece of paper, our so-called marriage agreement written when we were 6. During a game of house, on it were scribbled words. "When I turn 18, I'll marry Jason." And Jason had written, "I'll marry Emily as promised." He bawled in front of the camera like it was real, even managing to conjure a bubble of snot. Unbelievably, people actually bought. It outraged internet users who flooded my family's company page, calling me heartless and disloyal. demanding a boycott of our products. Even Hudson Ford got dragged into the mess and branded as a home-wrecking mistress. Boy, my parents were alarmed and carefully asked me, "Are you two dating?" I laughed. Hudson and I have a purely transactional partnership. There's no such thing as messy emotions involved. But still, he was the other central figure in this storm, a man connected to both our families. I had to clear things up, so I reached out to Mr. Ford. "Are you free? Can we meet in your office?" Hudson shook my hand and listened as I detailed Jason's desperate tactics. He paused for a moment, then gave a calm smile. He understood. I didn't ask what Hudson planned to do to destroy Jason. He was Jason's lifelong rival, and I was sure he had more than enough evidence to crush him. Since everything was settled, I turned to leave, but then Hudson called out behind me, "Wait." I paused. "Anything else?" Hudson drew in a deep breath. "Have you ever considered maybe we could make what Jason said come true?" Was that a roundabout confession? I smiled and shook my head. A lie is still a lie, Hudson, no matter how pretty it sounds. It'll never become the truth. After all, I had been reborn into this second life. I finally realized what I truly wanted most. I wanted a career. I wanted my own name on the list of the richest, not to stand silently behind some man as his beautiful invisible wife. Hudson Ford didn't press the issue again. Instead, he redirected his energy toward Jason Miller, and it was clear he wanted Jason dead just as much as I did. Hudson didn't waste time defending himself against Jason's smears. He took the opportunity to dig up every skeleton in Jason's closet. Photos of him getting drunk in nightclubs, records of him embezzling company funds, and proof of him exploiting his employees. And then came the rumors. Some even claimed that the car accident that killed Jason's parents was orchestrated by Jason himself. Before long, Jason was buried under a landslide of negative press. No one believed a word he said anymore. Hudson even paid off Jason's secretary and Lauren Lynn to publicly confirm his chaotic personal life, and that the company's downfall was entirely his doing. Online opinion flipped fast. "I used to work at that company," someone posted. "The boss made us work overtime for free, and constantly withheld wages. Nothing he says is credible. After the company went bankrupt, he still owed us 3 months of salary. If it weren't for President Shea and Vice President Ford taking over, we'd all be out on the streets. Jason's just clinging to his so-called childhood sweetheart to mooch off a rich heiress, and when she refused, he went and spread filthy rumors." Disgusting. Exactly. I saw Miss Shea the other day at the gym after work. She's glowing, zero signs of pregnancy. Jason's just making stuff up. Faced with growing public outrage, Jason panicked. He hadn't expected to come out of this looking. Instead of gaining sympathy, he'd shot himself in the foot. He tried to run, planned to skip town and lay low for a while, but it was too late. Hudson and I had both reported him to the police for defamation. As prominent taxpayers, our claims were taken seriously. The police moved quickly and arrested Jason. After he got out of jail, he still wouldn't give up. He started harassing me again, demanding I give him an explanation. I didn't bother responding. I sent my people to deal with it. He was beaten up and tossed right back into prison. After 2 arrests, Jason finally stopped provoking me. He decided he'd start from scratch, rebuild his fortune, and take revenge on me and Hudson once he succeeded. But in today's world, starting a business isn't that easy. Jason had lost every connection and resource he once had. The people who used to flatter him now treated him with cold disdain. Unable to secure a loan and burdened with a criminal record, he turned to shady underground lenders. Predictably, he lost everything. Desperate and cornered, Jason went to look for Lauren, hoping she'd take him in out of old affection. But Lauren had long since moved on. She'd found another powerful backer. When Jason showed up at her door uninvited, he was beaten and thrown out, one of his legs broken in the process. With debt collectors on one side and enemies closing in on the other, Jason saw no way out. In the end, he tried to kill himself by burning charcoal in his rental apartment. Even in death, he managed to cause trouble. His landlord had to deal with the mess. They said when the police investigated his death, they found a suicide note on his desk. In it, he cursed me, Hudson Ford, and Lauren Lynn, wishing us all miserable deaths. When I heard, I simply smiled. Who cares what he thought?